Good morning. Okay, a couple of promises. I'm not going to talk for 45 minutes at 8:15 in the morning. I teach two classes. I teach three classes at UT, one to 100 freshmen, one to 20 upperclassmen. They range from 8 in the morning until 6 at night, and I know what the literature says. You're not going to listen to me for 45 minutes. So what we're going to do is I'm going to speak for 30, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A. So I bring you greetings from Austin, Texas, where it is actually hot. So when I arrived here, people were telling me, oh, it's so warm here, it's so hot, we're reaching the mid-90s. We hit 105 last week in Austin, so I don't want to hear anyone complaining about this weather in Ithaca. It's great to be here. This is my first trip to Ithaca, and I first just wanted to thank Jen and the rest of the team for having me. This has been an amazing staff to work with and leading up to the event. So in 2006, I was on a conveyor belt that ran through Harvard Law School, and it would make frequent drop-offs at law firms around the country. And I just finished a clerkship for a major law firm in Houston, received an offer letter, and the going rate in 2006 for a first-year associate was $160,000. So I had two offers, two different firms, both in the same city. And that's when a good friend of mine, Alfonso Longoria, who was the middle linebacker on my high school football team. And I was a 5'10" at the time. I was a 5'10", 160-pound strong safety in high school. Much better student than I was an athlete. Never had any ambitions to play past high school, and I was fortunate because I only received one offer letter from a small school called Austin College, but really bonded with my friends on that team. So Coach Longoria calls me up and he says, hey, listen, I'm going to Columbia, South Carolina. And so I immediately asked, well, why does anyone go to Columbia, South Carolina? He said, well, I'm working this football camp. Steve Spurrier had just arrived, and why don't you just jump in the car with me? So I'm going into my last year of law school. I have 2 weeks off. I said, yeah, sure. So we drive to Columbia. We get there. The coach stands up the first day and he says, okay, there's a coach, a volunteer coach that did not show up. Who can fill in for him? So I'm sitting in the back on my BlackBerry. I mean, this was 2006, so I had a BlackBerry at the time. And I'm sitting there, I'm kind of fiddling, and I hear him. I was like, well, you know, I played high school football in Texas. I can do this. You know, it's not going to be that difficult. So I raise my hand. And he says, you, okay, what's your name? Daron Roberts. All right, where do you coach? Mount Pleasant High School. Great. All right, you're in. So I get 30 sixth graders this camp to teach them secondary skills. Best 48 hours of my life. So during the day, I'm teaching them how to backpedal, 90-degree turns, man turns, zone turns. At night, I am a dorm tutor. So I am there to make sure they're not burning the dorm down. They're in bed by 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. Perhaps there were some that went to bed at 10 a.m. And it hit me. I was sitting in the commons area, and I'm watching these kids bond around football. So we've got the kid from the south side of Chicago and the kid from the south side of Dallas. I mean, these are young men who would normally never become friends and never really meet but for the sport of football. And that's when I knew that I had to coach. So I jump back in the car. We go to Texas. I fly back to Boston. I called my mom and I said, Mom, I've decided that I want to coach football. She says, okay. She said, that's great, honey. Will one of your law firms allow you to take this on as a pro bono project? And I said, well, no, Mom, I'm not. I actually want to coach full time. She says, okay, hold on. Let me put your dad on the phone. So here's the setup. My dad is a Baptist minister. My mom is an elementary school principal. So there was very little room for deviation in my home, especially around education. So my dad gets on the phone and he says, so what's this I hear about you wanting to coach? and say, yeah, Dad, I want to coach football. He said, now listen, we paid for the Kennedy School. We paid for your 2 years of grad school. I said, yes, sir, I know that. He said, but your name is on those law school loans. And I said, I understand that. He said, you do understand when you graduate, they're going to give you 6 months and then they're going to start knocking on your door for payment. So I understand that. He said, all right, good luck. Hung up the phone. Typical Kurt Roberts fashion. I said, all right, this is a good start. So the first thing I did was I called the law firms, and I immediately, before I had written any letters or called any teams, I immediately turned down the 2 offers that I had. And so for me, what I understood was I needed to completely cross the Rubicon. I could not leave any lifelines out there because I knew that as I pursued this path, I would get a lot of rejection letters and a lot of no thank yous on the phone. So the first thing I did was call up each law firm and say, thank you, I appreciate the offer, but I don't want your $160,000. Each firm responded the same way. Are you going to the other firm? I said, well, no, I'm actually not going to practice law. And then we had this conversation that is really reminiscent of breakups. It kind of went like, is it us? Was it the summer? I said, no, it's me, it's not you. I loved the dinners, it was great. I really, sitting on the 29th floor of that building for 6 weeks was really a phenomenal experience. It's not you, it's me. So what are you going to do? I'm going to coach football. Pause. Okay, well, good luck. So I enter my 3rd year of law school, and I began writing letters. And it was the most difficult thing that I've ever done. I had penned legal briefs, appellate briefs, and now I could not write a 1-page letter defining why I wanted to become a football coach. It took me 48 hours. Red Bull, pushed through it, and started to mail letters to every NFL team. So by default, I would mail a letter to every head coach and every coordinator on each team. And then I would look through the bios to see if there were any connections. If someone was born in Texas, I would mail a letter to them. If someone had majored in government in undergrad, I would mail a letter to them. I was trying to find any hook. And as soon as I would mail letters, the rejections just kept coming back in. Just kept coming, just kept coming, just kept coming. Finally, in April of 2007, I get a call from Herm Edwards, who was the head coach of the Chiefs at the time. He said, I want to speak to Daron Roberts. This is Herm Edwards. So my initial thought was, this is a really cruel prank by one of my boys. But I just happened to be in my apartment at the time. I'm looking around, so all of my friends were in my living room. I said, okay. He said, listen, I got your letter. I don't know why you want to do this. Why in the hell does a guy who's going to graduate from Harvard Law School want to coach football? And so I told him the story from the camp. He said, you're crazy, you're nuts. So here's the thing. I'm going to offer a training camp internship to you. 18-hour days, no pay, no benefits. I said, great, that's just what I was looking for. So I need you here June 20th, and we'll start up. So I graduate from law school. Dean Kagan passes my diploma to me, and I remember a meeting that I had with her because I had talked with her about this process. And she said, remember this, when I hand your law school diploma to you, it will not come with an expiration date. And rest assured, legal problems aren't going anywhere. So if any time you want to return, you will have the opportunity to do so. I jump in my Tahoe, I drive to Kansas City. I get to Kansas City. I don't have many friends in Kansas City. So I have 14 former NFL players on staff, 90 players on the roster at the time. And they're all wondering why this lawyer, this disgruntled guy that's been at Harvard wants to coach football. But I made a couple of promises to myself. The first thing I did was I went to Academy and I bought an inflatable twin mattress. And I promised myself that I was going to sleep at Arrowhead every single night. And in thinking about the talk last night, I also made another promise to myself. I said, no one is going to beat me into the office. So once I figured out what time people got in, and the defensive coordinator would arrive at the office at 4:45 every morning, I was there at 4:30. And I just grinded it out. I sat in the back of the room, I carried a notebook with me, and I wrote. I mastered the copier, so I understood that the age gap between me and the rest of the staff was around 20 years. I had to become Lord of the copier. I actually read the manual, the thing in the back that's dusty that you don't recognize until you have to get back there and unplug it and plug it back again. So I knew how to double side, staple, everything. And it came in handy because each day a coach would have a problem around the copier and I would fix it. Being able to fix that problem would lead to, well, hey, why don't you just sit in here and watch some film with me? And we'd watch film. And that led to, hey, why don't you draw up a scouting report on the Raiders? We're playing them in a couple of weeks. They do some interesting things on offense. Why don't you just look at a couple of plays? Then that grew into, hey, on the practice field today, why don't you just start throwing some balls? I'm going to lead the drills, but you throw. And then that led to, hey, why don't you take the guys on Fridays and do your own drills? So throughout the course of that year, and it was a rough one because we went 4-12, I accumulated more and more responsibility. At the end of the season, we come in the day after the last game. I'm noticing that coaches are walking into our head coach's office, and they're coming out with dollies and security guards. So he's firing half of the staff. So the secretary comes to me and she says, Daron, Coach Edwards would like to see you. So I get up and I start walking, and I'm thinking to myself, you know, the great thing is, technically, he can't fire me because he never hired me. So I walk in, and he says, hey, Daron, listen, this has been a great experience. So it starts to begin to sound like those rejection letters, and we've really appreciated all of your hard work. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm waiting for it, and he slides a piece of paper across his desk, and he says, welcome to the NFL. And so that was my contract. And I thought back to the genesis of that desire to coach, being on a practice field in Columbia, South Carolina, turning down offers to pay off the loans that I accumulated at Harvard Law School, and now after 6 months, I was an NFL coach. And I did that for 7 years. And then I went to Cleveland, Ohio. Is anyone from Cleveland? Good. I don't mean that, sort of. I go to Cleveland, Ohio. New general manager, new owner, new head coach. 2013, we go 4-12. So for all you mathematicians, that's not a good record. The day after the final season, we're flying in from Pittsburgh. We land. I get a text message from the owner's chief of staff. 8 a.m. staff meeting. That's not a good sign. We walk into his office. He says, listen, I appreciate all of your hard work, but I'm firing every last one of you, from the general manager down to the groundskeeper. So I think to myself, well, I'm on a 2-year deal. It's guaranteed. Well, let's go take a little break. Well, I went home, and I started scrambling eggs. I want to cook breakfast for my family. My 3-year-old son walks in at the time. He says, you eat breakfast? I turned to him, I said, what are you talking about? Yeah, I eat breakfast. And then he looks at me, he says, I've never seen you eat breakfast. And he just moseys on over to the table and sits down. And I break down. So my wife's coming in like, what happened? Did you burn yourself? Why are you crying in the kitchen? You're having a quarter-life crisis? And I said, you know, Dylan's never seen me eat breakfast. And that's when it hit me that I had spent 7 years spending the majority of my time with other people's sons. And my own son didn't know me at all. So I returned back to the University of Texas and started to teach classes on leadership, strategy, and sports. And then the Ray Rice episode unfolds. And Commissioner Roger Goodell comes into Austin to meet with our head coach of football, Charlie Strong. And he asked me to sit in on this meeting because he wants to really find out what more can we do as coaches, as athletic directors, as teachers and professors, as community leaders. What more can we do to change the conversation around character reform? And as we began to talk, it became apparent that by the time that these young men get to the professional ranks, it's too late. So many of their value systems are entrenched. And so the University of Texas, we created the Center for Sports Leadership and Innovation. And at our core, we develop and deploy leadership curricula to high school and collegiate student athletes. I have a few points that I want to leave you with. And this is from my journey throughout life, throughout coaching, and just what I found. First, don't play the game that you find, shape the game that you play. So don't play the game that you find. Text this to yourself. Make me feel good and act like you're writing something down, because I understand this, right? 10% of you will actually remember this at some point in the future. It goes back to the conversation last night. 1 out of 60 actually followed up, and so now they're still working with Spartan. So just don't play the game that you find, but shape the game that you play. And here's what I found. From Harvard's Kennedy School to Harvard Law School, what I found is that it seems to me that the people who have the most options, the smart, the bright ones, the athletic ones, the good-looking ones, those folks tend to be the most risk-averse. So I'm in a class at Harvard Law School with former Navy SEALs, brain surgeons, and astronauts, and Miss America. And none of them had the courage to do what they wanted to do. 2 of them wanted to become a chef. 1 of them wanted to open up a garden shop. I still don't quite understand the concept, but she called it a garden shop. That's great, okay? And the other guy wanted to be a cartoonist. But they were at Harvard Law School. And that's not what people at Harvard Law School do. And they had been to Stanford, and then going to Bucknell, and then going to Cornell, and that's not what people from those places do. What you will find is this: whether you are the trailblazer for your family or the torchbearer, only you will have to live with the path that you take. So whether you're trying to satisfy this desire from your family to become the 4th-generation doctor, or if you're trying to live up to grandmother's hope that you become the first lawyer in your family, whatever that burden is, it will at some point shake you and only you. So instead of moving throughout life and trying to meet other people's expectations, shape the game that you play and be honest with yourself in deciding what it is that you want to do. The next point is this: choose purpose over position. Choose purpose over position. So at the University of Texas, 50,000 students. It's 2,000. I get a call. Hey, Daron, what's going on, man? Hey, what's going on? Listen, I'm running for student body president. I would love for you to be vice president. I said, okay, let me think about that. I appreciate that, Matt. Phone hangs up. Another call. Hey, what's going on? Hey, this is Ramsey. Hey, Ramsey, how's it going? Hey, listen, I'm running for president. I would love for you to be vice presidential candidate. Okay, Ramsey, thanks, I think. All right, appreciate it. 2 more calls. So 4 people think that I'm just good enough to be their vice presidential candidate. So then I think to myself, oh, what the hell? Just run for president. So here's what happens. I announce that I'm running for president, and the way it works at Texas is that you run on a ticket. So each college gets a certain number of representatives in the assembly based on population. So my ticket had 60 people on it, okay? You have 2 weeks to hit up roughly 20,000 people. And so we start campaigning, and people are telling me, you know, most of our presidents in the past come from Houston or Dallas, and I'm from a small town in East Texas, 12,000 people. That's great. Then one girl's telling me, you know, I don't know how to say this, but I said, I'm black. She said, yeah, well, that's not what I meant. It's funny. Whenever people say that's not what they mean, it's actually exactly what they mean. No, I didn't mean it that way. I said, hey, yeah. I said, listen, fortunately for me, I've been black my entire life, so I know this. She's like, well, don't you feel like you're kind of at a disadvantage? I said, no, not at all. So we campaigned for 2 weeks, and we're going, and we're going, and we're going, and we're going. And then I realized I'm chasing a position. So I'm chasing the position of student government president because 6 of our governors in the state of Texas have been student government presidents at UT, and so many Texas Supreme Court justices. But I really don't know why I'm doing it. It's kind of this dare that I've made to myself. But there wasn't really any true passion behind and purpose behind that decision. And so I went through with it and was fortunate enough to win. And I took that role for the year. But as I reflect back on that experience, I was chasing a position. And at the end of the day, positions and titles make for poor traveling companions. Your SAT score and your LSAT score and your MCAT score will not get you through rough nights. Being the VP of such and such and going to Morgan Stanley and Goldman, and listen, between Goldman Sachs and McKinsey, I have more friends who have gone through true crises, true mental crises, because they felt like they had to be the Goldman trader. They had to be the McKinsey consultant. They went there, they came out on the other end of the meat grinder, and now they're wondering what are they going to do with their lives. So I understand the pressure that we as high achievers put on ourselves. And also I understand the external pressure that you feel from people telling you exactly what it is that you should be doing. Remember this, those people have absolutely no clue what they're doing. This is one thing that I found. The people who know what you should be doing have absolutely no clue what they're doing. So don't feel the need to listen. Next thing is this. I want you to put a set of feet on your prayers. And I think of something that when we first landed in Detroit, so I coach with the Detroit Lions. Jimmy Schwartz is the head coach. We go in after the 0-16 season under Rod Marinelli. So this is the worst performance by an NFL team in the history of the league. The first thing we did when we got there, we took down all the signage, took down every picture in the building, and we put up signs that said this: hope is not a strategy. Hope is not a strategy. And we interviewed each player, interviewed every person in the building from marketing to community service. And the people who weren't on board, or the people who felt like somehow things would just turn around because that's just the way that the world works, we let those people go. So we started cutting people. And I remember sitting down with Coach Schwartz and I said, Coach, this is a tough job. When he called me about the job, he said, hey, do you want to come to Detroit? I said, ooh. He said, listen, you're in Kansas City. I mean, come on, it's like a one-off deal. I said, well, I'm not sure it's a one-off deal. I said, Coach, they went 0-16. I've seen the tape. We played them this year. They've got maybe 2 players. He said, I get it. I got it. He said, listen, this is going to be a chance that you're going to have to say we changed the culture. We took the worst performing team in the history of the league and we took them to the playoffs. He says, you're never going to have an opportunity like this. I said, ugh. I said, well, let me talk to my wife. He said, yeah, go ahead and talk to your wife. You got an 8 a.m. flight tomorrow. Hung up the phone. So when I get there and I see these signs, hope is not a strategy, we're talking. He said, listen, for so long this team has lived off of things will just get better. But things don't just get better. They only improve through intention. This is something you must do. I want you to take a set of dry erase markers, take them to your apartment, take them to your dorm room. In your bathroom, write down your intentions for the week. So every Sunday, I write down my 3 intentions for the week. Dry erase marker, and I make sure it's on my side. My wife's like, listen, you've got from here to the wall. So it's on my side, okay? But I write things like this. This week I'm going to be the best professor at the University of Texas, period. So what does that mean on the ground? That means I have to prepare at least 3 hours for every hour that I teach in class. That means that I have to have less than a 24-hour turnaround on email. And I need to meet with students, at least 5 of them per week in each class. Not of their own doing, but I have to select them and say, hey, listen, let's go talk. Let's go to Starbucks. Let's sit down and talk. Because if I'm going to be the best professor at the University of Texas, I have to do the things that other professors are not willing to do. My next intention for the week, I am going to be the best father, and I have 4 kids. Delaney just arrived last Wednesday, all right? I am going to be, thank you. Thank you. I should Periscope you guys and send it to my wife because she really deserves all the credit. All of the credit. So our 4th child arrived last Wednesday, and I say to myself, I'm going to be the best father to Dylan, Sydney, Jack, and Delaney this week. Okay, that's great. Sounds great. So what does that mean? I have to spend at least 30 minutes with each of them each day. And we have a timer. So if you walk into our house, it looks like a coaching office. We've got dry erase boards up on the wall. I've got slogans, play like a champion today's over my son's walkway. I mean, it's insane, but my wife allows me to get away with it. But if I'm going to be the best father to those 4 kids, then I've got to spend meaningful time with them. We have a donut council. Every Saturday, we go to a different donut shop in Austin. We've got T-shirts, all right? That's quality time that I spend with them. The third point I always say to myself, and I put it up on the board, is I'm going to be the best husband to Hillary. So what does that mean? That means spending at least 30 minutes with Hillary each day. That means listening to Hillary and not just waiting to talk. So for the first 2 years of our marriage, I realized what I was doing, and this is leadership, what I was doing when I was listening to Hillary, I was just waiting to talk. So what I heard was, what, pause. Now it's time for me to talk. But a leader, whether it's in your family, an organization, in a team, a leader understands that listening is not waiting to hit the start button for you to talk. Listening is actually processing the words that we hear and then taking those words and turning them into actionable items, what we're going to do. So be intentional. Hope is not a strategy, and put a set of feet on your prayers. The last thing is this. Seek out investors and not encouragers. Seek investors and not encouragers. This is what I found. I was coaching at West Virginia, and I had a recruiting area of Virginia, Maryland, DC, Texas, and Florida. So I was never home. I was flying around watching kids. So I'm following this one defensive back from Miami, and all he posted on Instagram, all he posted on Twitter and Facebook was how he was grinding, hashtag grinding. I'm like, oh man, okay. All right, I get it. So I'm all right, this kid's pretty good. So I go to the high school, I meet the head coach, and I said, hey, listen, I'm here to see so-and-so, and looks like a hard worker. He said, who? And I said, so-and-so. He said, wait, you said hard worker, right? I said, yeah, well, I've seen some tape, and he looks pretty good, and he was just grinding this morning at 5 a.m., looks like to me, He's got a shot of some Nikes on a pavement at 5 a.m. He said, listen, that kid didn't want to be great. He said he would rather tweet and post about grinding than actually grind. He says, I guarantee you, he wakes up and takes a picture and goes right back to bed. I said, wow. But here's the reality. Something tells me that kid, and I've seen the recruiting game, that kid was getting so much reinforcement from people. Hey, I saw the post. Man, I know you're working hard. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. That all he wanted was a set of encouragers. He wanted a group of people around him to endorse what he was doing. What he really needed was investors. And here's the thing about investors. Investors will tell you when you're going the wrong way. Encouragers tend to find the sunny side to your actions. You need people who are honest with you, who will say this: if you continue down this track, this is the result that you will meet. Point blank. And I think about the discussion from last night. If you keep going down this track, this is the end that will meet you. You need people who will be honest with you. You also need to serve that same purpose in other people's lives. So again, don't play the game that you find, shape the game that you play. Choose purpose over position. Put a set of feet on your prayers, and seek out investors, not encouragers. Thank you very much. My dad's a Baptist minister. I'm a fifth generation East Texan. I am the great-grandson of a minister, the son of a minister. And so I grew up in this Baptist tradition of praying, and I'm a believer, and I believe there's a place for prayers. And this is actually a saying from my grandmother. I found that people are very content to live in the realm of hope. And I think about the discussion last night, and he talked about staying in that zone of discomfort. So oftentimes we pray and we think and we hope, but we don't transfer that higher goal to actionable items, right? So it's not enough for me to say, I want to be the best professor at Texas. I have to put a clock on the time that I prepare for each and every lecture. I have to meet with 5 students a week. I have to mark that off on my calendar. So if you look at my Google Calendar, it is color-coded from 3:30 until 9:30. So I have every segment of my day marked off and color-coded. So if it's a class-related item, it's in blue. If it's a family-related item, it's in orange. And I tally that time up each week. Because, when you're the son of a minister, the one thing I used to go with my dad everywhere, and nursing homes and funerals. So he would take me I was 5 years old, I'd go to these funerals and just kind of sit there. And I really got this deep sense of mortality, right? Like you hear this, time is actually finite. And I'm going to be 37 in November. So I am very conscious and intentional with every minute of the day. That doesn't mean that if something comes along and I see a friend, we can't go to Starbucks and have some lattes and sit down. But I'm going to make sure that 95% of my week is intentionally scripted by me. And this is one thing I believe. 78%, the research shows 78% of people spend 30 minutes on their phone each morning scrolling through Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, the web, right? So we wake up scrolling. I think we have to flip that paradigm and become more scripters. So people aren't scripting their time. They're waiting to see, hey, what's in the news feed? What happened last night? Who posted what? So that, turning those prayers and those hopes and those thoughts into actionable items and then holding yourself accountable.
So praying that you have the commitment to do that and the wisdom to know how to do the 95%.
Right, and the wisdom, and then the perseverance to actually say, okay, I'm getting up at 3:30, so I want to write this book. This book is not going to just get written. So I'm going to pray that I'm able to have the energy to write this book. But now I'm going to schedule 30 minutes each morning writing this book. And at the month marker, I'm going to send this to an editor, and I'm going to let them read it, and then I'm going to come back. And that's, I have a camp called 4th and 1, where we work with high school students, males. It's a football camp, it's an ACT prep camp, and it's also a life skills camp. And so what we found is, first of all, the first thing I asked them is, who's going to the NFL? And 99%, the hands go up, so okay. The numbers say 0.08% from high school to the pros, and they don't believe that, right? So then I say, okay, so what are you doing to go to the NFL? And they tell me that they're playing football. I said, well, what does that mean? So what are you doing outside of the regiment for football? Oh, well, I'm so tired, that that's all I do. I said, well, do you understand who you're competing against? So there's some kid who's working out on his own during football season that really wants to go to the NFL and probably has a better chance of going there because he's just not sticking to the schedule that coach has made for him. So, yes, sir.
Last night, Joe spoke a lot about adversity and how that helped kind of create this mindset of persistence.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you had a moment or moments of adversity that have helped you achieve that?
Yeah, moments of adversity that have helped me to get where I am. So the training camp that I worked for the Chiefs, that was my make or break. So Herm told me, Coach Edwards said, listen, I'm bringing you in for training camp. My policy is that I don't allow training camp interns to stay. Because if I start doing that, everyone will want to stay. So, okay, it makes sense. 2 weeks into the training camp internship, I just hit a wall. I was up at 3:30 because he works out at 4 each morning. I'd done my research. So I said, listen, I need to at least speak to Coach Edwards 3 times a day. And one of those talks I need to have with him needs to be in the gym. So I was up at 3:30. He was there at 4. I was in bed by midnight, waking up doing it again. I hit a wall. I mean, I'm crying in my room. I'm like, what's going on? I'm a 28-year-old man, and I'm on a blow-up mattress, and I smell, right? And one of my jobs each day is to put out cereal for grown men, right? What went wrong? Took a left turn and should have taken a right. And I broke down. I just sat in the room and I thought to myself, I don't want the narrative to be, oh, I almost made it, right? And that's one reason why I turned down the law firm offers. And I could have called them up and said, hey, I want to come work, and they probably will let me come back. But that moment, and it's really like Joe was saying last night, it's like that's where you really just have to just go faster. Because your brain just needs something. You need to slap your brain in the face. That's really what it comes down to, right? Harvard Law School, I was waitlisted 3 years in a row. I mean, who's waitlisted 3 years in a row? I was listening to Joe's story, right? 3 years in a row. So I go to the Kennedy School to kind of hang out. I worked on the Hill to hang out. And then the 4th year I get in. But it would have been easy after year number 2 to say, I'll go somewhere else. But that's where I wanted to go. The reality, here's what I know. It sounds good in a speech, or it sounds good on like one of those cool Instagram quotes, with the kind of faded image in the background. It's like, yeah, it just doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good in the morning. I mean, no one likes to get up at 3:30, right? No one likes to go to bed at 11. I mean, no one likes to get stretched or get told no. But that's why people who are great are in a minority. It's a small club, and they haven't had to renovate the building because it's going to be a fixed number in my mind. Yes, sir.
So how high did you get in the coaching ranks?
So I rose up to an assistant secondary coach. So I coached corners. Is anyone who knows football here? Okay, that's great. All right. So football. Corners, this is maybe the worst position to coach in the NFL. Okay? I'll tell you why. You have to go backwards. So what you're asking a man to do is to initially move backwards while the fastest human on the field at that time is running forward. Okay? You're also asking him to break up a pass or to anticipate where a guy is going, and he doesn't know where he's going. So I've got the most athletic person on the field in any NFL game is a wide receiver. Calvin Johnson, 6'5", 238 pounds, 4'3", 840, 46-inch vertical. That's good. that poses a problem for matchup. So when your corner's out there and Calvin Johnson knows where he's going, the DB has no clue. These men live in fear. That's why the Deion Sanders of the world, the guys who have swagger at that position, they're so rare. Because if you're a corner, all you can think of is the scoreboard lighting up. So I found that most of my job, I was a psychiatrist. I had guys lying on my couch in the office, like, man, we're playing the Packers, man. I know. This is what you signed up for, right? Aaron Rodgers. I said, listen, you tell me if you have any misgivings now, because we can find somebody, we can trade you out here pretty quickly. So yeah, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. I wouldn't say that I miss it. I miss it a little bit on game days. I like the fact that I can watch games with my son. But it was a unique experience. Yes, ma'am.
What has been your most rewarding coaching experience?
Most rewarding coaching experience. At West Virginia, so I went to college for 2 years. West Virginia, I coached receivers. So I coached defense before that. But I wanted to see what the other side of the ball looked like. So I coached receivers. And there was a steep learning curve for me. And we took a team that wasn't really good, and we ended up going 9-3. And then we beat Clemson in the Orange Bowl 70-33. And I guess what was rewarding about it was that you really saw how if you can orient people around a mission and really get them to buy in. So we said, listen, Clemson is more athletic than we are. We're going to take 10 offensive plays into this game. 10. And we took 10 plays and we repped those 10 plays in practice. In the walkthrough. This is something that Bill Walsh would do. He would script the first 25 plays of a game. So he would say, I don't care what happens, we're going to call these 25 plays during the game. And we took that same philosophy, and it was amazing to watch them grow confidence because they felt like they were a little bit at an athletic disadvantage and then score 70 points on offense. So it was rewarding to watch that process. Yes, ma'am.
How do you mentally prepare yourself for risky situations?
Oh. Yeah, how do I mentally prepare myself for risky situations? So I try to get rejected as much as I can on a daily basis. I'm the guy who's going to always ask for a free drink at Starbucks or an upgrade. I'm the guy at Nordstrom's or Macy's who's going to ask for 15, 20% off. And it's not because I want the deal. I have 4 kids, so I do need to save money, right? It's not that, though. I like to hear people tell me no and practice that. So there's a great, the guy's name I'm going to forget. It's like 100 ways to get rejected. I don't know if you've seen this. Just Google that, it'll come up. This guy basically gave himself 100 tasks to get rejected. So, for example, he took a soccer ball. This is a grown man, took a soccer ball, just walked up to a random house and asked the guy, could he play soccer in his backyard? And the guy looked at him and he's like, okay. And he played soccer in the backyard for like 30 minutes, and then he's walking out and he turns around and he said, hey, why did you let me play soccer in your backyard? He said, well, you had like the shin covers and the little flimsy shorts, and he said, I just figured you really wanted to play soccer. He said, you look the part. Key takeaway, right? Just look the part. So just getting rejected, I try to get rejected as many times as possible. I'll apply for things that I don't want. Just try to get rejected. Because I do feel like you have to build a comfort level with hearing no. And then the second thing you have to do is you have to start anticipating the counter arguments. So go to Starbucks. We got the pumpkin latte coming out here pretty soon, which is a highlight in my life. That's what happens when you're 36 and you have 4 kids. So pumpkin theme comes out. I know that Starbucks has a policy where they don't let you take pictures with signage. Did you know that? I knew that. I almost got arrested once. So I asked the manager one time, I said, hey, listen, I really love this. I love pumpkin lattes. Let me take a picture with that sign. She said, listen, company policy, okay? I just had a meeting, and we can't let you take a picture. I said, but I really want to take this picture. I promise I won't share it. It's just something I want to keep on my phone. She's looking at me kind of like, this guy's weird. I said, okay. So what happens is after a while, you just kind of get used to hearing the counter responses. So get rejected as many times as you can. That's my key takeaway. That's the only way you're going to build your resistance level up. Just encounter rejection, encounter rejection. And here's one thing I will say about especially high-achieving young people. Right? You're all in great schools and everything looks good on the outside. The problem is you probably haven't been rejected as much as you need to or should be. So you've got to go in there and get rejected by someone. So apply for things you shouldn't get on paper, right? Just to build your tolerance level up. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
It sounds like one of the important parts to strive for greatness is like the process of what you're doing. How do you go about setting the standards for what you do every single day to ensure that they're going to lead you to that greatness?
Okay, now nice. And you're going down to level 5. Okay, so here's what I do. Here's my weekly. This is my weekly regimen. Sunday is my agenda setting day. So my wife knows that I go to Starbucks for 2 hours, and I set the agenda for the week. Okay? So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I set 3:30 wake up. I have 15 minutes of meditation where it's just I'm in the closet and I'm breathing. I'm not thinking about anything. Now listen, I'm a black Baptist from Texas. I'm not the kind of guy to meditate. It's not my thing. We pray, we don't meditate. All right? I will tell you that practicing to breathe has been the most beneficial exercise I've undertaken in the last 10 years. So I just breathe for 15 minutes in my closet. Okay? Just me. I get up, I go do my day. I go do my workout, I work up for my class. So what I do is I script out every part of the day. At the end of every day, I look back at my calendar and I tally up the minutes that I spent on each exercise. So prep for class, so my professor's bucket, how much time did I spend? Teaching and prepping for class, meeting with students. Okay, finishing the book, how much time did I spend? All right, the prep, the research, the writing, boom. Spending time with Sydney, I got 4, so I got to think about it, right? Spending time with Dylan and Jack and Sydney and Delaney. All right, tally that time up. Okay, I missed some time here. They get more time the next day. So I do that. Sunday's my agenda setting day. I go Monday through Saturday, but I'm always assessing myself in real time. And I got this thought from football. We go to practice. Here's a typical day in the NFL, right? You get in, you have a meeting. You watch tape from yesterday's practice. Then you go out and have a walkthrough. You walk through the plays you're going to run in practice. You tape the walkthrough. You come back in and you watch the tape from the walkthrough. Then you go to practice. We tape the plays at practice. Then you come back in. We watch the tape that we had from the plays at practice. And then you do it all over again. It's a constant assessment, constant assessment. So I've tried to incorporate that into my life. Yeah. Any other question? Yes, sir.
What would you do if you ran into a player you were working with who just didn't seem like they had the drive or the desire internally to like achieve greatness?
Yeah, if I was in the NFL, we'd just cut him. So the question was, what would you do if you ran into a player who didn't have the drive? And this is the main distinction. This was the big, for me, this was the shock, right? And the big difference between the NFL and college. If you meet a player in the NFL who doesn't have the drive and the work ethic to really push through, you cut that person. Because you just don't have time for rehab. There's no time for rehab. You've got 16 games. We're on a short leash. I'm telling you that I spent a year coaching in Cleveland and all of us were fired, so there's no time for rehab. That's why you have to do the research on the front end. If you're in college, it's different now. The main difference in the NFL, my phone would never ring at home. When I move over to college, I get a call from the academic advisor. Hey, Coach Roberts, Jimmy didn't go to biology. Okay. Do you know where he is? No, I don't know where he is. Well, can you find him? Because he's late to chemistry. Okay. So I got to go find Jimmy. Jimmy, why didn't you go to biology? I overslept. Jimmy, you can't oversleep. I know. And so you try to push, and I love people, okay? I love people, all right? It was hard for me to adjust going from the NFL where you're just like, hey, I saw a guy get cut in Kansas City because he walked out to practice with the wrong body language. I was standing by the head coach. This guy walks out. So we have 90 players in training camp. You've got to get down to 53 by the start of the season. This guy's walking out. Herm's like, who is that kid? I'm like, number 47, you know? So I pull out my little thing. I said, oh, this is Johnny so-and-so. Okay, remind me to cut him at the meeting after practice. True story. I was like, okay. So I'm sitting there going, man, should I remind him? So we go to the meeting. He's like, Darren, what was the guy's name? I said, so-and-so. He's like, all right, hey, let's cut him. And so a part of my job was to package up lockers of guys who were going to get cut. So one thing we do, we just package up your locker and throw a mailing label on it and ship it. You get a meeting, you get a talk with the assistant GM. We appreciate it, you're going your way. But if you want to be a really good coach, I'm sorry, that's probably not answering your question. You need to find out what makes him or her tick. I teach a class of every freshman athlete at Texas. The first thing they have to do is write a pivotal experience paper. There's no rubric, MLA, APA, I don't care. I want you to write about the most pivotal experience from your life. I read each one of them. So I get stories about rape, incest, HIV, everything. Moms on the road, can't find dad. I hear all of these stories on paper. And then I have a mandatory minimum one meeting each semester. And we talk through that experience. If I'm a coach, I've got to be doing the same thing. So I need to know what's wrong with Jimmy, what's going on at home. Don't talk about football and cover 3 and what we're going to do on third down. You need to know what's going on at home with child support, with the girlfriend, with mama who needs money. So it has nothing to do with the sport. The sport's the easy part, right? You guys tired of me yet? Yes.
What's your purpose?
What's my purpose? My purpose is to help young men to craft and execute a blueprint for success. When I look back at all of my experiences, and especially young African American men, at the end of the day, I want to help young men craft and execute a blueprint for success. All of my experiences working with the nonprofit, coaching, teaching, it all for me kept coming back to, I want to take some kids who probably think they can't end up here and just shift their worldview, just completely shift their worldview, expose them to stimuli that they would normally never come into contact with, and just push the curve on what they think they can do, right? So just show them, like, what, wait, a coding class. Wait, I can't code. Yes, you can. Boom, by the end of the day, hey, it's not so bad. Okay, yeah, so you can code now. All right, writing poetry. I can't do this. Yeah, you can. Write poetry. Oh, this is pretty good. Keep going, right? Go to college campus. They walk in. We take them to a college campus. They look around. They're like, this isn't so bad. One kid said, hey, they feed you at college? I said, yeah, they feed you. But it was a good point, right? For him, college was this other planet. I mean, for him, we might as well be like sending out the satellites to take pictures of this thing called college, right? And sending images back. That's how foreign it was to him. So just getting them to touch and feel and smell what it feels like to be successful, that's what gets me going.